Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the workshop Climate Change and Climate Action in Brazil. I would like to welcome Professor Vladimir Maciel from the Mackenzie Center for Economic Freedom, who, together with Cristiane, will moderate this panel.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our university, the second day of the seminar. Panel number 4 is about consumption in the city, data-related initiatives to foster a sustainable consumption culture. Professor Vicente, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Professor Vladimir Maciel, and I'm the head of the Mackenzie Center for Economic Freedom. It is a research unit of our university dedicated to study free market, government interventions, and regulation. This panel is about the flip side of production in the land is the consumption in the city. One of the major problems with respect to the sustainable consumption is the lack of information along the productive value chain as to whether it respects environmental standards. So our panel today is going to talk about initiatives, data initiatives, and all the discussion about using information and technology and innovation to foster a sustainable, friendly city. Okay, so can you introduce, please?
I'd like to introduce our speakers to you. First one is Bruno Flack. Bruno is the director of IBM Research Brazil, where he leads a phenomenal team of talented scientists, engineers, and designers, working on areas ranging from artificial intelligence and mathematical modeling to hybrid cloud and high-performance computing. Bruno joined IBM in 2011 and has led and contributed to both basic and applied research projects across a variety of disciplines and industries. He holds a PhD in operations research from PUC-Rio, and he has been a visiting researcher at the Center for the Analysis of Risk and Optimization Modeling Applications of Brunel University, London. Welcome, Bruno.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Andrea Malerba. She's electrical engineer with experience in the utilities and distribution sector. He joined Enel in 2016, spending half of his career in Enel in Brazil, where she was responsible for investment and maintenance activities to sustain electrification and resilience of the network. Starting from December 2021, she is responsible to coordinate the energy transition roadmap in the Latin America region to promote low-carbon policies among the countries in which Enel operates. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Andrea. And now, also from Enel, Mariana Gonçalves Castro Tomé Soares. She is head of Data Protection Office at Enel Brazil. She's also a coordinator of the Working Group for Data Protection in Abradi. She is a lawyer with 15-year experience in the electricity sector. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you all for the introduction and the opportunity to be here sharing some thoughts with you regarding this topic.
Let's also do some
I'd like to introduce Ana Carolina Meirelles de Oliveira. Ana Carolina Meirelles is a social communicator from the Federal University of Rio, specialist in business management from the University of São Paulo, and master in sustainability in Technological University of München. She has been working for over 16 years with people, companies, and institutions to promote positive change and legacy through impact projects, corporate sustainability, and ESG initiatives. Currently, she is the Senior Manager of ESG, Sustainability and CSR at TIM Brazil, the leading telecom operator in 4G coverage in the country. Thank you, Ana Carolina.
We have also Marcela Santos from SP Parcerias. Marcela is a project manager at São Paulo Parcerias, leading concessions and PPPs, or private-public partnerships, development in the city of São Paulo. Marcela is a lawyer and with expertise in solid experience in biddings and public contractings, concessions, and private-public partnerships on urban projects. She's a master at state law from University of São Paulo, and she's graduated in law from the Federal University of Goiás. Welcome, Marcela.
And finally, I'd like to introduce Simão Saura Neto from SP Trans. He's industrial mechanical engineer, postgraduate in business administration. He has been working for more than 40 years in the area of urban transport. Currently works at São Paulo Transport, the company in charge for the bus transport system in the city of São Paulo, as the superintendent of vehicle engineering and spatial mobility, responsible, among other points, for promoting the development of new vehicle technologies and energy alternatives for applications. Thank you, Simão.
As we experienced yesterday, the dynamics of our workshop would be based on 10-minute presentations, followed by questions posed by the panel and by the audience. So I would like to invite Andrea from Enel to start with his intervention. After... Yeah? It's you, Carol. Could you start? Yeah, because we have a situation with the streaming. Okay, so 10-minute presentation, and then we would like to ask you some questions as well as the audience.
Yes.
All right. That marvelous person there will help you out with the 10-minute control. Wow, she has the proper instruments for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cristiane. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor Vicente and Mackenzie University for inviting me and Team Brazil to this exciting panel. And for the ones who cannot see me today, I'm a white woman with brown eyes and brown, bit long now hair, a little bit chubby, maybe. And a remarkable or a striking physical characteristic of mine is my thick eyebrow, which is due to my Portuguese heritage. So, well, Team Brazil is, for a long period of time now, working with data and database solutions. For instance, we've been awarded for a database solution we created aimed at a collective way to take care of the city. This was awarded by the IDB, or BID in Portuguese, the Inter-American Development Bank. During the Olympic Games, for instance, in Rio, in partnership with the municipality, we created a solution which was aimed at a safer way for people to move during big events. And this technology was also used during the COVID in partnership with other operators and the governments. There is a big list of solutions or data-based solutions Team Brazil has been creating together with partners, with corporate partners, and with governments also. This is mainly because our core business nowadays is this one, is to create the possibility for people, for institutions, for companies to connect and to provide solutions that bring possibilities for people to consume better, to consume in a more sustainable way, but also for companies and institutions to achieve their goals in a sustainable way. And this is all, of course, very linked to the SDG 13, for instance, the climate action one, because, for instance, in the field or with agribusiness, we provide high connectivity solutions that can diminish the use of energy, the use of water, and even the use of pesticide, for instance, with predictive models. So the 4G, the 5G leads to less consumption, to a more sustainable way of consuming materials and resources. Not only in the field, but also in the city. This also means that we can provide food to the city in a more sustainable chain, with a more sustainable chain. So this is a little bit what Team Brazil has been doing with data and high connectivity. And what I was thinking about when I was reading about the panel is that we are talking about data for sustainable consumption, and I was thinking about what about the data? Is it sustainable itself? Where does it come from? And is the infrastructure which holds it or which enables it, is it sustainable? Is it renewable? Is the energy besides it or under it, is it renewable? And also the equipment, as you know, Team Brazil is one of the leaders in telecommunications in Brazil. We are actually the leader in 4G connectivity. This year we have, actually till 2023, we have the goal of connecting all municipalities in Brazil. This means, again, more possibilities for a sustainable consumption, for sustainable lives. And I think we have to also think about it, the data itself and where this data come from. Is it renewable? Is it sustainable? At Team Brazil, we achieved last year 100% of renewable energy in our operations and also on our network activities. So this means a lot to us, and it's very, very tough to remain with this goal, 100% of renewable energy, renewable and reliable energy, approved, attested renewable energy. And also the data centers, as you may infer, for this great amount of energy that we have to provide you the connectivity you have on your mobile phones, and also for the companies to connect their industries or their plants. We really have to have equipments which are also sustainable friendly. The 5G is coming. Actually, the 5G is here now. I'm fully 5G connected. And the 5G is also a great challenge for us to achieve a more eco-efficient connectivity, a more eco-efficient network, because 5G consumes a bit more or a lot more. It's not yet stated, but it will consume more energy. But we are also smarter now. We know how to have more efficient data centers. So I think that's it. I hope we enjoy this panel, and I hope I could transmit to you a little bit of what Team Brazil is doing now related to our main theme. Thank you.
Ana Carolina, if I may, I have a question to you, and then I will open the floor for the audience for questions that they might have. You were talking about 5G and all of the possibilities, all of the windows that 5G connectivity would open for us in terms of sustainability, in terms of smart situations in this environment and context that we are discussing here. But you also said that 5G is challenging because of the very same reasons of consumption. And this panel here is aiming to discuss the consumption model and how that impacts climate change and what would be the solutions for this. So in your perception, specifically when it comes to 5G connectivity, how it would specifically contribute to achieve or to foster a more sustainable consumption model?
Yes, of course. As I said before, the 5G has the possibility for us to achieve a more sustainable consumption for instance, in the fields or in the agribusiness. We will have even more ways or more possibilities to achieve more efficiency crops or more efficient food. And this is on a large scale. These are large-scale solutions. This means we are now one of the sectors or one of the industries which can more contribute for sustainable consumption and, of course, the climate action, the climate activities. Because with our connectivity or with high connectivity, you can make predictive models, but you can also be more efficient. In a way you consume less energy. And I'm saying that because with the connectivity, of course, by connectivity I mean 4G or 5G connectivity and the data that we are talking about. So actually you can see, for instance, wow, I'm using a huge amount of energy, why is that? Or I'm using too much fuel, and why is that? But now, with 5G, we already have projects like that. But with 5G, what is coming is I will have to consume more energy because of these. Because you start working with prediction. You are not on the field of action to solve something that happened or that is happening. We will start to solve things that did not occur yet. So this is a great shift, of course, especially in the agribusiness. And this means more agro-efficient businesses, but also this means more health for people. If we really achieve what has been studied by universities and researchers, this means also our food can be healthier in a large scale. So there are lots of possibilities with 5G, not only in the field, but also for us to consume in the city the products of the field of the agribusiness. So it's more and less this.
Hi. Thank you for your nice presentation. I have a question that is related to another technology that is nowadays also very relevant and developing in the context of connectivity, which is satellite internet. Because yesterday, I guess that one of the main concerns was not only related to data and data sharing, but also in a more basic layer, which is the digitalization, especially in areas in the Amazon, for example, in which you basically don't have internet, access to internet. And then the whole infrastructure, when we think about fiber cables and so on, it's very expensive and it doesn't make sense to go to that place. It's bad. Satellite internet could be an option. And then my question, like thinking in how to digitalize some areas of the agriculture areas in that regions. To what extent for team internet satellite is part of the projects? That would be I would like to know about it.
Thank you. Great question. Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Herman from Max Planck Institute.
Thank you, Herman. Actually, this is a great question because at Team Brazil, we have a formal goal on our industrial plan to connect all municipalities with 4G. As you may think, Brazil have municipalities which are really tough to connect with fiber or with other technologies. So what do? We have to invent, we have to create something, not only satellites. So for instance, Team Brazil created a project named Sky Coverage. This means anywhere where we can see the sky, we can connect. This is like a philosophical motto of the team or something like that, and then they created the name Sky Coverage. This is not necessarily satellite. This does not necessarily use a satellite technology. It uses the sun energy, and it's off-grid. It's an off-grid solution. A part of it is a off-grid solution. So we are connecting the municipalities which are really tough to connect with fiber, because we have a formal goal on our industrial plan to do so. So I think not only people have to be creative to solve these kind of problems and to solve social problem. This is a social problem. This is a social goal for a team, and we are doing it. We can do it. Sometimes it's even less expensive than the original or the traditional technology, and we are also helping our company to be more sustainable, because this is renewable energy. It's the sun we are talking about. It's a renewable source of energy. So I think the technologies are here to be used with creativity, but we have to open our minds to do so. And I'm really proud of this project, because it was Team Brazil's, our technology team. I don't know if you guys are watching us, but they are brilliant. They come up with brilliant solutions, and I think Bruno will also say something like that in a few moments. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
I have another question for you, Carol.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm a student here from Mackenzie in the LLM program. My question is for you, but it's also for everybody who's going to speak. I would like you to address one point that I've been thinking about. We know energy is getting smarter. We know technology is getting more efficient, more accurate. And we know how faster this will allow the society to produce, to do whatever they want to do that needs connectivity, energy, or whatever. What I want to know is if there is a study or if this has been thought of. When people do things faster, they do more things. So they use their time, they do things faster, then they have the free time to do more. And humans consume. When they have free time, they consume other things. And I know if this has been thought of, if you have thought about the increase in different types of consumption and how this can affect health, but not only in an agricultural way, but consumption of not only food, but goods, technology, entertainment. And since we are talking also about health, but not only food-related health, if mental health is being accounted in this, because you probably understand what I'm talking about. If you think about the COVID pandemics, people were at home they were doing home office, they were working from their homes, they had more time, they consumed more, they got into a spiral of wasting money, time, connectivity, energy to buy things they didn't need, or to spend that free time into not healthy things, both individually and environmentally. So I would like to know if the market, the companies are thinking about what will society do with this free time that this efficiency is bringing us, if it's possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for asking this, really. Companies are made of people, and just like you, I'm also very concerned about it, very concerned about it. And what we as people can do is to fight in our corporations to change minds. Because I think what you've asked is a profound thing. It's not a superficial thing to be changed. We are talking about human behavior. You were talking about the human mind, the human mentality, and also about education. We have to structure a network of education, network in the sense, of course, of network. So this means public education has to have something related to consumption, something related to the way people consume things. Private education have to have it. Companies have to have it. So what I'm talking about at team now is, and this is a bit of a fight every time we do something that change people's mind. I'm talking about we have more than 65 million clients at the very point, the very end of our chain, of our consumption chain, or our customer chain. And this means we have a lot of power, and I think a city has a lot of power to educate people. And this is what we've been talking about at team. This is eco-literacy, climate literacy. We can use connection to educate, not only to make people mentally unhealth, but to educate young people or even anyone. So this consumption is in a very sustainable way. You reminded me of a professor of mine that said, Anna, stop saying conscious consumption. Any consumption is unconscious. It has its part of unconsciousness. So, but what we are trying to do is to, just as a therapeutic way, in a therapeutical way, you know there is unconsciousness not there, but you have the tools to make powerful changes and powerful actions. So I hope I could share with you this concern, not answer your question, but share with you in a proper way your very relevant concern, Sophia.
Sophia, I guess that your question was really inspired because Bruno wants to comment too.
I was asking if I could, but thank you. Well, good morning. I haven't introduced myself. Good morning, everyone. I want to comment on your question because I think it sort of teases out an important topic that expands beyond actually the focus that you leaned on. And I'm certainly not qualified to talk. I'm not an expert in sort of the mental health issues that have certainly sort of peaked up with the pandemics. But I think at the heart of your question is something related to trade-offs and opportunity costs of decisions or whatever developments would make with the use of technology. Now, that is certainly true at the level at which you raised a question in which Ana Carolina was talking about. But I think it's also true in the sense of every decision that we take, every technology development that takes place, will always lead us to a point where we're going to have to evaluate the trade-offs, right? And while that is true at the individual level in terms of how it is that we use our time, what it is that we consume when we have more free time, as you were pointing out, that on a micro level is also very valid. For example, when we talk about the evolution of energy sources and all that. So, for example, and this has been part of the debate in the country in the last few years, when we talk about, okay, we're not going to allow hydroelectric power or some dam to be constructed in the forest, for example, that certainly has its damages to the environment there. Part of the problem with that debate is, okay, if we're not doing that and we're still consuming energy, that energy is going to have to come from somewhere else. And that trade-off or the opportunity costs associated with those decisions are not often, I think, put into place, right? So we take this sort of unilateral view of saying, okay, this is bad because these are the damages and all the bad things that will happen from that, but we don't always go all the way to understanding, okay, if we don't do that, then that power might have to come from, say, a natural gas power plant or coal or whatever the other source might be. And this is now hopefully connecting to the theme of the workshop. This is exactly where the need for us to have data that extends beyond the niche or the specific focus areas that we're talking about, I think brings a lot of value, because it allows us to not only debate the questions in a data-driven and very objective manner, but also to understand if we are to take this or that decision, what are the second, third, nth order effects associated with those? So that was it.
Thank you, Bruno. I would like to invite Andrea. I think that I would try to find the angle. This is the right angle. I think you can see me. Andrea, are you the one starting with the intervention from Enno, or is Mariana?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so
First of all, let
floor
me
is
start
yours.
with a sound check in order to be sure that you can hear me clear and loud.
Yes, we can hear you clearly and loudly. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So let me start from thank you all for the invitation here. I'm together with Mariana, so we are trying to mix it up, an engineer and a lawyer talking about the same topic. So it could be kind of an explosive scenario. I don't know, Cristiani, if you want to start with the question that we're going to alternate each other.
Well, I will follow your lead. If you prefer going with the questions, or if you want to speak a little bit earlier, just let me know.
Let me start by a brief introduction. So today here, the focus, it's not on the energy transition itself, okay? Because we can talk for hours about the energy transition, but how we see the energy transition will change our habits in the future and transform the way in which we use the energy. And these, connecting to the last intervention, actually the energy transition relies on new technologies that are connected, that are data-driven, that are IoT. And so, for example, all the data that I'm going to talk with you comes from a report that Enno promoted together with Deloitte, Brazil. Okay, we promoted it on all the geographies in which we operate. So later on, if you have any specific questions, I will be more than happy to even set a specific meeting with some of the interested people. But just to give you an idea, what we see is that the energy transition is not an opportunity. It's an opportunity, it's not an obligation. Just to give you a brief idea, we expect 8 million jobs to be created in the up to 2050. And when we start to look at the numbers, we see some interesting numbers from the electrification perspective. So, for example, today, Brazil has a 20% electrification rate. That means that 20% of the energy that Brazil uses comes from an electric source. And in 2050, this number will be 44. Might look simple, but this will not be as simple as it might seem. And if we see electricity generation today, we have roughly, just to give you a number, without entering in the details, we have roughly 600 terawatt hours produced every year. And in 2050, so 30 years from now, this number will be 2,400, so 4 times what we are using today. We can talk about anything, but since we have other, for example, stakeholders involved in the transportation sector, we foresee that, for example, electric vehicles that today, just to give you a number, in 2029 were 0.01% of all the vehicles circulating in Brazil will be 84%. And in 2025, it will be more economic if we see the total cost of ownership to own an electric vehicle. So just to, and when we talk about electric vehicles as itself, for example, just to give you a brief number, when we, in Europe, but this also applies to Brazil and Latin in general, the maximum power of a house is 3 kilowatts, okay? And when we are installing high power chargers, a single car may absorb up to 300 kilowatts, a single car. So this just to give you the perspective that, for example, in the future, charging one single car will be equivalent to switching on 100 houses at the same time at the maximum power. This introduction is just to let you understand a point. Can we address this energy transition the old-fashioned way with bigger, stronger networks, okay, constructed as we used to do up until now? No, that's not the solution. Okay, we have to think a smarter way in order to do it. And when we talk about smart, we talk about data. And when we talk about smart, we talk about connectivity. For example, talking about smart meters, for example, in Brazil, Enel has this massive rollout happening right now in Brazil, in Sao Paulo specifically, where the smart meter is not just the thing that you will not be able, you will not need to read, for example, your meter every month, but you have a lot of data. Okay, you can, for example, enable services. You can have an hourly tariff. You can select your vendor. You can, for example, select a green vendor. So you have a meter, and you can select which vendor you're gonna see. And this also comes from prosumers, for example. In prosumer in Brazil, we have an explosion of distributed generation right now, and we will see it even in the coming years. So, for example, a smart meter will let you analyze not only the consumption of the consumer right now, but the production of the prosumer in the foreseeable future. And this will also talk. All this data will talk with our house, with our car, with our appliances. Everything must be connected in order to limit the amount of power that the network has to provide. Otherwise, as I was mentioning, all these numbers cannot be sustained in the traditional way. So, just to give you this introduction and to test this mix, I will hand out to Mariana in order to let us understand all these new things, how will impact from a data perspective and security of data. Mariana, up to you.
Perfect, Andrea. If I can say, maybe a lawyer, a little bit engineer, as in the introduction, being a data protection officer gave us more skills for my lifelong learning. We need to understand a little bit more about technical and how to be a little bit engineer, not only lawyers, also managers, risk approach, and so far. In this regard, I think that we need to mention, as you have mentioned, about this huge amount of data and leading the transition and energy transition without new technologies and new energies, and this whole data economic and also this whole connective is not you cannot do that without a strong data protection compliance, data ethics, and also a strong governance program, so you can give confidence not only from the private sector but also from the public sector. You also need some regulatory landscape and milestone, so they can support all this transition, not only in the electrical sector, but the electric sector is what we will be talking about here. We can see this from the LGPD, the major regulatory that we have so far, but not only LGPD, we also have some discussion regarding technologies, new technologies, and also automatization of intelligence. So we have also our regulatory agency now enacting some security and cybersecurity resolution. So I believe that the biggest challenge is how to manage this in order to drive the economy, the data economy up to this moment, and how to show the strong compliance that we have been put in place so far in order to have the confidence from the data subjects, from the society, and also to put in place some controls and security measures that can people can rely on the technology, right? And they can be confident that it will be for the wellness, not only against them, they will be secured. And how to address this is the biggest challenge and what we will be discussing so far.
I have a question for Mariana, but maybe Professor Vladimir, we discussed about some challenges, and I think that Andrea might help us in clarifying that. If you like to start, or I can start with my question to Mariana. Yeah? Okay. Mariana, I would like to hear from you and to understand your perception on challenges that we are facing and that we will face for quite a while, I suppose, when it comes to data sharing, and how it can be discussed in a climate action context.
This is my thoughts, right? Also considering the regulatory landscapes is an opinion. But here, I think that the biggest challenge that we have for electrical sector is that we don't have an open source, an open energy scenario in Brazil yet, considering the regulatory scenario that we have so far. So I think that the biggest challenge is coordinate and everybody work on not only in self-regulations, but also regulations that could lead to this confidence scenario where we can have the open data and open sources in order to foster and enhance the machine learning, and also that the process that need data, keeping the data subjects secured, and also having legal security for investing in the development of new technology. So I think that's the biggest challenge so far. In Brazil, it is already a scenario and a reality that we have, for instance, open banking, and also their discussion open health, but open energy, we're still giving our first steps on that. But this is not means that we don't have nothing and we can do nothing, of course. From data protection point of view, we always have the compliance program from all controllers and companies from private sector, such as Annual, that we have been facing challenge, and we could prove this. Also from another companies, we have, for instance, in our sector, a group of studies and works that work together jointly in ABRAD, so we can lead the discussion and also implement important projects in order to put in place some controls, measures, and also to use the association to look for these new to enhance this dialogue also with relevant stakeholders. For instance, cadastro positivo, that's a way of consumers we can use the data, and also how we can share the data with the credit bureaus. There's a legislation of that, but nobody says how we could lead to that. Also, considering as a citizen situation to give consumer credits and so on, and also using distribution company source. And we put this together in ABRAD in a self-regulation manner also with other association, and we are also discussing some code of conduct in order to lead self-regulation on this regard from data ethics and also data protection and privacy compliance. Not only this, but also ANEL coordination with the new regulatory agents authority, National Data Protection Authority, INPD, also to coordinate and have such like they have with PROCON and SENACOM, some kind of agreement so they can coordinate, because we have overlapping jurisdiction, not only from regulatory but also consumer. So I think that these are the biggest challenge, to create confidence of data subjects, stakeholders, and society in general, so they can be confident of the new technology that we have been fostering and investing, and also create, and in some cases ask for support and lead the narrative in order to create some regulation that we also have this scenario discussed and secured for everybody.
Thank you, Mariana. Any questions? No? Professor.
Hi, good morning, Mariana. Thank you very much for your presentation. I wanted to ask you something related to smart meters that you and Enel also install. Hear me? If you install in the households of people in Sao Paulo, I would like to know how this worked, and because I think they were connected to apps in mobile phones, so the users can know the consumption and so on. And as you are an expert on data protection, I would like to ask you if, for example, I am a user and I would like to know how much energy I am consuming on the weekends in comparison to the weekdays. If this is accessible for me, or what kind of information they can access. And the second one is, for example, if I would like to share my information with other operators, is this possible, or the information is just accessible for Enel right now, in the case of smart meters of households?
Mari, could you hear the question? Do you want me to?
Could you repeat, please, because I missed some part of this.
Okay, Carolina was the one that posed the question to you, and the question is related to the control of energy consumption in the households. For instance, if I am a user and I would like to know the amount of energy consumed, especially, for instance, in comparison to what I do consume during the week and during the weekends, if I would be able to have that information. That was the first question. And the second question was, if me, as a user again, I would like to share my information with other operators, if that would be possible, or if the state of art today would be that Enel would be the one having those data, and then I would not be able to share. Is that correct?
I'll leave the first part of the question to Andrea, and I will answer the second part. Okay, Andrea?
Okay, no, yes, I can get the first part. Okay, with regards the what kind of information the customer may have from smart meter is way more than what you're expecting. For example, we have to differentiate regarding the technologies that we are rolling out in different countries. But I'll give you the best example, okay? For example, what we are rolling out in Europe, and then I will tell you a little bit more of what we are rolling out in Brazil specifically. What we are rolling out in Europe, for example, the customer has access to its energy consumption every 15 minutes. So the customers will have to understand its curve, not daily or, for example, in the weekend, every 15 minutes, and it has this information available the next day. So, for example, today you have the information regarding on what you consumed yesterday, with regards to your consumption or production, because you may have both your consumption and production every 15 minutes. So, and this opens up also not only as an opportunity for the customer, but also as an opportunity for the market operator. That in many countries, for example, the market operator, the retailer, is completely different from the distributor. So, for example, it is something that happens commonly, for example, in Europe, in Italy, in Spain. These kind of offers are a reality where you have some hours where you get energy for free. So this is a part of a market strategy in which, for example, in some cases, the customer may choose 3 hours in which the energy is completely free. And so clearly, in the other 21 hours, it's a little bit higher, but it's compensated. This is a strategy, one of the tariffs that may be possible. With regards, this clearly Enel developed technology according to regulatory needs. Okay, so for example, in Brazil, the customers, yes, will have access to its consumption. Okay, you will be able to understand, for example, how much energy you consumed in the weekend, or for example, in any specific day. It's a little bit less omnicomprehensive due to what the regulation sets for us as a standard to operate in that specific market. And to answer even part of Mariana part, just to give you an overview, can you share? This depends a lot on the regulation, okay, for example, as Mariana will say, but in some other countries, for example, I'll just give you this. For example, some regulators have an independent third-party platform in which we are obliged to transfer the data of the customer, and this may be opened to third parties that may request it. Then I'll leave the floor to Mariana.
Andrea, so just from additional comments and compliments Andrea vision how to provide. So it would be clear for those that already have installed smart meters, so they can understand the consumer, they can choose also their tariff from out of ponta, as we say, high consumer, and you can pay less, including, this is one of the projects that we have submitted to Enel Sandbox regulatory projects that we have ongoing in the electrical sector. There are open call for new technology initiatives in order to reduce the tariff, and the people can pay less for their energy. And so they use two other regulatory source from efficient and energy program, and also for development and research. So they combine it together and they create this sandbox. So all the distribution companies could submit their project to gather all this new way of thinking, and also how we can provide better services, technology, and at lower cost to the consumers. And then, in this regard, the smart meters is one of these technologies that allows not only having the control of their data to know, not in a monthly basis, but on regular and within 15-minute basis, your consumers, so you can be entitled not only to access, but having full control of the electrical bill by the end of the day, and also to production, as André has mentioned. And we also have geração distribuída, distribution generation, where you can put some solar panels. So it's really a new role, and entitles the data subject, the clients, that's the data subject, to access their data, and also always consumer is also personal data, because profiles are your information, and so you can access anyhow you want. And you can also be entitled to share the data within whenever you want. So if you want to share the data and allow the legal representative to access this information from you, from your electrical bill, you can contact the distribution company, and you can also allow this authorization to give a third-party access. In a general overview of the sector, in order to put in place smart meters, of course, that we need to share the data with the providers, that external providers, that are external processor or intercompany processor of the technology and the services, as well as we need to share this information also with regulatory agents, and whenever a competent authority requests. So it's a general situation where we have the data sharing so far up to this moment, following also the regulation and the legislation that we have so far. Besides legal obligations such as cadastro positivo that I have just mentioned, and other situations where we need as sources to share the information from a legal basis.
Thank you. Okay. Obviously, we're going to open for more Q&A at the end, but now I would like to invite, thank you so much, Andrea, thank you so much, Mariana. I would like to invite Bruno to speak to us. The floor is yours, Bruno. Just let me know if your mic is working, so you can use mine.
Yep, seems to work. Can we have those two slides? And I promise I'll be very. Should I go in there? No, the third. Thank you. In the meantime, good morning, everyone. My name is Bruno. Thank you very much to Cristiane and Professor Vicente for the invitation. Thanks for my fellow panelists, and thanks to everyone who's made the time. I only have two slides, and in the spirit of, one, making sure that we have, that we're here to have a conversation and a discussion rather than just stare at each other's charts, and two, making sure that we also have time for the remaining panelists.
I think you should check that.
Okay. I'll try to be very brief. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so what I thought I would begin with is this is sort of my attempt to establish a framework for how to think of the questions and challenges that we are here to discuss. And the way I've attempted to do that is to think in terms of the what, the how, and the why, meaning what is it that we want of the data such that we can inform the operational and strategic and decision processes that are associated with climate action. How is that implemented, or how is that to be a reality in terms of the technology stack? And this is obviously a sort of somewhat biased perspective, given that I come from IBM, which provides computing technologies. And then finally, why is it that we're doing that? And while it is true that a lot, if not all, companies today are trying to do right for the environment and for the business, this also has to be connected at the end of the day with the bottom line. So making sure that we align the incentives for the right thing to do from a climate change and sustainability perspective be aligned with whatever it is that those businesses need to do, and how it is that they become more efficient and make more money in the process. So let me begin with the features and attributes. Again, what it is that we want out of our data. And this is not certainly a comprehensive list, but I thought that these are some of the attributes or some of the qualities of the data that we want to make sure to exist. So number one, we want it to be finance grade, and that means we've come a long way to make sure that we have reliable, trusted data that's published in financial markets, such that investors, stakeholders can hopefully believe what it is that companies are saying, and then act on those decisions or act on that knowledge. We want the same thing to be true for sustainability, or perhaps more broadly ESG data overall, such that we can reliably communicate that to others and have others, investors, stakeholders, consumers, etc., make their decisions based on that. So we want that data to be trusted, and we want it to be secure. Obviously, you don't want that to be accessible to others who may not have a say in it. Associated with that, we want to make sure that that data has reliable provenance. So we want to make sure to be able to trace the steps across the different processes, such that we know the origin and how the data has been modified up until the point of consumption. Associated with that, we want to then to make sure that we have auditable processes, such that, for example, when we talk about whatever metrics are being provided for specific products that sit on a supermarket shelf, we can reliably look at the history of that particular product and make sure that each one of those steps is actually true. And finally, sort of last but not least, we want to be able to make sure that all the data that's being collected is also provided in a scalable and accessible manner, such that it enables insight. So rather than just sticking with the reporting aspects of having the data available, we want to make sure that that is also provided, say, to data scientists or to application developers, such that they can build models on top of that and go beyond the sort of the simplistic reporting or descriptive approach to looking at data, but also, as Mariana was saying, being able to do prediction models, and based on that then do prescriptive optimization models, say, that enables to support decision-making process, or in some cases automate part of that. Now, going to the second or the middle part of this, what is the technology stack? And this is a sort of agnostic view of domains, but I think in one or other way, every one of us will be able to sort of relate to what's in there. And this, I think, connects to Haman's questions at the beginning, when he asked about the digitization of remote areas, something that Mariana or that Ana Carolina also commented on. We have a vast number of data sources today, and while some of those are local in the sense of having coverage for cell phones, having sensors deployed in the field, it spans all the way into data that comes today from satellites, for example, that can be used to understand what's happening in the field when we're talking about agriculture, without having to have something on the ground, boots there. So I think that's a very important element of the whole stack. Obviously, it doesn't stop there. Somehow that needs to be ingested, such that we can hopefully start collecting what it is that we need, and then being able to use that for decisions. The third layer of the stack is what we usually refer to as storage and management, and that is, again, where a range of technologies might come to be useful. So, say blockchain, for example, is one of those storage and management technologies that allows one to have a distributed database that is trusted, that is accessible to everyone, and that allows a lot of those features and attributes of the data to exist in the first place. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the final layer of the stack is what it is that we do with that data. So how do we use that to build models that would allow us to understand the impacts on climate, how it is that we build models that would allow us to perhaps create better plans to mitigate or adapt to changing circumstances, particularly related to climate and the impacts that it has on society. Now, finally, and this is, again, how we look at things, and where I've tried to connect with the perspective of how is it that it all comes together when we're looking at the city or business, perhaps more broadly. We try to look at it particularly in terms of these sort of three main areas, in terms of the business imperatives / use cases that business or the companies are interested in. They relate to how everything in terms of the attributes of the data and in terms of the technology stack allows us to have more intelligent assets, facilities, and infrastructure. And that is to be understood both in terms of, say, the particular facilities of a given company, a building, for example, all the way to how municipalities run an entire city when we think about the infrastructure that's run by utilities and et cetera. There's also an element of that which relates to responsible computing and what we call green IT. Meaning there are ways today, the workloads, the computational workloads that are needed to run the operations of a lot of the business consume an enormous amount of electricity. And there are ways in which that can be done much more efficiently as well, which is part of why it is that we are in this space. And then finally, obviously supply chain, all the way from the field when we're talking about agriculture, but across any other industry or segment, supply chain is one of the major elements for emissions, and also one of the areas or segments that we believe can greatly benefit from the initiatives around data. Can I go to the next slide, please? I know I have very little time, so I'll just run through, thank you, a few examples which connect to, and I won't go into the details of that. I can obviously talk in more detail about any of them later today. But I just thought I would highlight a few of the ones that we've worked with, which again connects all of the elements of the technology stack in favor of or in service of a particular use case or application. So, for example, with Plastic Bank, we worked to establish a blockchain network that provides rewards to people that are collecting plastic that would very much likely end up in the oceans, for example. So that is an example of having technology work in collaboration. Sorry. Obviously that will happen now. Was that you?
It could be her, but that was not her. Because I told her to stop.
Exactly.
That's the only reason why.
Sorry for that. Well, we eat our own dog food. So IBM, for example, uses some of these technologies to understand how it is that we are occupying our spaces, how it is that our facilities are using energy, how it is that we're doing waste management and all that, such that we can reliably understand where we are and then make progress, hopefully, towards the sustainability goals that we established for ourselves. Farmer Connect is another example of a blockchain network that allows one to have complete visibility or traceability of coffee in this case. So you can know exactly where a particular bean came from, all the way to the wrapping in which it sits in a supermarket shelf. And that allows one to better understand whether or not that particular grain of coffee is coming from an area that is or is not protected, whether or not the producers are being fairly paid for their produce, etc. Carhartt is an example where that's another green IT thing. So we work with them to establish better ways in which they manage their computational resources such that they don't have a lot of just idle servers sitting there consuming energy without doing any sort of useful work. Melbourne Water is an example of a water utility in Australia, of course, where they're using sensors, computational vision, to better understand how it is that you should be deploying crews to mitigate the potential effects of, say, severe weather storms or weather events or severe storms, for example. And these are all, again, related to the fact that once you have the data collected in the proper manner, you can then build the models that will allow you to anticipate, and this again connects to what Anna was saying at the beginning. It allows you to anticipate, for example, where there might be a flood, such that you can proactively dispatch equipment crews to deal with that. We can also use the same kind of modeling to better understand where and how it is that the methane emissions are taking place, such that you can proactively go on and understand what needs to be done, what might need to be done in order to counteract that. So I'll wrap it up here. I know I've taken more time than I should, but thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
If you want to speak more, we have time. It's okay.
No, that's okay.
Really? I have a question.
All right.
Putting traceability as a core point, and that was put as one of the core points of this panel, it's undissociable to discuss about blockchain, as you said. But blockchain, as we were discussing before, is one of the solutions. It's not the only solution. It's a good solution for certain situations, but not so good for other situations. So I would like to hear from you about other new technologies that could apply in that context and to foster those things that we are discussing here. And another thing that I would like to hear from you is about a point that you once said in one of our conversations about how to federalize data.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, awesome, we'll do. And those two are actually connected. So to your point, I think, and it's an important one, blockchain has its use cases and it has its advantages in particular scenarios. It's not a silver bullet that solves it all, of course, right? And so in the cases where we're talking about traceability and in the cases where we're talking about a distributed set of stakeholders where you don't want to rely on one or other party to have or to be the single source of truth, blockchain might be part of the answer to that, right? And it's usually more about the business model and the interplay between the stakeholders than a technology discussion. Now, putting that aside, as you mentioned, when we look at the stack that I had there, the data sources, the ingestion, the storage and management, and finally the modeling and the analytics, there are innovations across each one of those layers that are really important, I think, as to how we eventually come to actually developing and delivering something that is of value to companies and to consumers likewise. So I'll just mention two, and that sort of connects to the second part of the question as well on the federalization of data. So there are various ways in which data can be stored and managed, for example. So when we talk about databases, that serves as sort of this blanket or umbrella term for a lot of things, and that's certainly not the case when we're looking at specific data types, for example. So one of the things that we are working on is what we call the geospatial discovery network. And in those cases, we're bringing together the data from weather simulations. We're bringing data from IoT sensors, from drones, from satellites. And the way that you can make that data scalably and reliably available to say, again, a data scientist or someone that's developing an application is such that you have to do it in a way that they can easily build models. You can just provide it or just have it sitting somewhere and expect everyone to download that data, to do all the transformation that's needed, and then to come up with a model, say, 6 months from now. So the way in which we are building distributed databases that connect and protect the privacy of specific data types or sources that may be made available to the modeling phase, but not to be fully made available or open to others, I think says a lot in terms of what it is that we can do, because again, it's one thing to have that data sitting somewhere. It's a very different thing to actually having the data made available so that others can build on top of it. And then connected to that, so this point is about the sort of the geospatial querying, storing, and managing of data. And geospatial data is particularly important in the context of climate. At the layer above, I would say machine learning, artificial intelligence, and physical modeling is where the technology is going these days. And what we currently have in terms of the capabilities of modeling, again, in these sort of three connected areas, allows us to do much more than we thought was possible, say, 10 years ago. So we can today, given, say, images from LiDAR or from satellites, given sensors on the ground, we can build very reliable models that will allow us to pinpoint where emissions are coming from, for example. Or it will allow us to proactively understand where there might be flooding areas in the case of a storm, and then hopefully act on that. So again, to summarize, I think geospatial data storage and management and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and physical modeling are sort of two sets of technologies that are really important for actually delivering the value that sits on that data, but that would be otherwise inaccessible to others.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions?
Interest?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
I knew that was coming, that's why I didn't
Yeah,
answer
I
that.
was. Yeah. Thank you, Bruno. I am very interested in the project of Food Trust, IBM Food Trust. I would like to ask you first, who are your clients? For example, I was reading that is Walmart in the US, Nestle, the big players. But
Right.
I am also interested to know if farmers are your clients and how do you support them? Because it might be the case that they don't have the resources to pay to IBM to create this business intelligence. So how do you help farmers who also need to show their products to show clients or to show us consumers that they are the source of the product and how they do it?
Great
Thank
question.
you.
Sure. That happens in the case of farmers. In the case of Farmer Connect, that's exactly what happens for coffee, right? So this is not Food Trust. It was built on similar technology, but it's not Food Trust, the product itself. In that case, it all relies on, and obviously the client is not the individual farmers themselves, right? It's got to be some co-op sitting on top of that, or some company that's looking at the entire supply chain to understand the end-to-end impacts of what's being done in the field and how that hopefully translates to, say, improved margins on the final product. So the whole premise, I think, in some of these cases is that by providing that kind of visibility and by ensuring or providing confidence to the end consumer that those particular products have been sustainably sourced, that they have been part of an operation that more fairly rewards the producers for it, they will allow the final product to charge a premium price for it, right? So hopefully the incentives are aligned, but again, that relies on the assumption, which I think is fairly true to a certain extent, of consumers being willing to pay more for a product that can be proven to be sustainable, etc. In the case of Food Trust, our client, as you said, is Walmart, is Nestle, is Carrefour. And they're the ones that then sort of connect the dots in terms of how it is that all of the other agents in their supply chain need to be part of the network. So in that case, the big guys here, the big retailers and producers, or stores in the case of Walmart, for example, they determine that, okay, this is a system of record by which we're going to now establish our operation. So everyone needs to connect to it, but they're the ones that are actually paying for it. So at the end of the day, the individual producer is just inputting their information in a different system rather than doing it in whatever other way they were doing it before. They have it as part of the Food Trust network such that it connects to the blockchain and then it becomes accessible throughout the entire process. Sure.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much, Professora Cristine, for the invitation and Mackenzie University. It's very important to say I'm not here representing São Paulo Parcerias or Municipality of São Paulo, but as a public agent and as a citizen, I will share with you some reflections about the city's consumption problems. So, thank you very much. I took some numbers so we can reach the hard scenario we face today. We definitely have a dilemma in the cities. Although they represent only 3% of the land territory, half of the world's population is there. And by 2050, it's expected this number will reach almost 70%. And cities account for almost 80% of energy consumption. So if we continue in this pattern of consumption, we will need something like 3 planets to provide all the resources we need to provide our lifestyles in cities. So I think SpaceX didn't find another Earth yet. So we have to find a solution here in our plant. And Sophia, maybe the solution is in changing our way of production. So we have to be aware that if we don't change the way we produce, if we don't change the way we consume, we can change this pattern and we can change these terrible numbers. And the good news is that cities are also the place where the innovation and the money is. Today, cities represent 80% of the global GDP, our PIB. So we have money, we have innovation, we have people, and it's very important to remember that in cities we have data being generated every day because the population, the citizens interact by platforms, by apps, and they are generating data. They are providing information about behaviors, about many patterns of consumption, and so the government has a rich material to deal with, and the way we deal with this data will make us make better or worse decisions in public policies. So we reached the debate about making smart cities. We part from a first idea, a limited idea of digital cities based only or mainly in technology. And today we talk about smart cities, adding the human or the social elements, and we definitely need to talk about climate smart cities, focus on sustainability and resilience to fight against the climate crisis. And we have to start talking about low-carbon urban development as a new vision, a new strategic way of planning cities, and focus on mitigation and adaptation. World Bank is already talking about that. I suggest you to look at this report. There are a lot of standards, a lot of tips to do a program like that. And to create a climate smart city, we have to look to all the stakeholders and to think about partnerships. I think we can never make cities smarter or more intelligent without partnerships. So we have to start with citizens. In a smart city, the key for citizen participation is transparency. So the public government must access data to population and provide the ways, the platforms, the apps to the public participation. And we have to remember that all this technology stuff, in one hand, they provide the participation itself, but in the other hand, they collect information. They collect data about the habits of population, about the pattern of consumption, and about opinion. But the point is, we are not collecting all of this data, and we are not forming our databases. Public sector is not processing the data as we could do for have the smart cities. So this is the challenge, and we have to face it. Because the way we deal with the data will help us in the process of public decision making. And I'll have to face it here. And here we reach the public sector's role in this partnership model. And of course, we have to provide public service, we have to plan and execute public policies, but more than that, we have to provide this participation process, and we have to open the data. I think that today the governments are one of the most generators of data in the world, and we have to share this data with you, with the enterprises, with all the stakeholders. Of course, we have LGPD, we have GDPR, we have the rules for that, but we have to generate intelligence with this data that today is in public databases, because they are not organized. We have a lot of information, but we don't know how to do with that, what to do with that. And that's why I have to change and to share this information and this data with other players. And if I take an example of what we are doing in São Paulo Parcerias, We are the public company that developed the partnership program, the private-public partnership program in São Paulo. And we started to think about low-carbon urban planning projects. We are trying to do that. We are doing our best. Now we started with the green energy program. We really believe that we have to change the way we consume. Here in this project, we are looking to the municipality of São Paulo as a consumer. As one of the biggest cities in the world, we have a large consumer energy. And so before we think something about our citizens, we have to look we have to take our responsibility as a consumer. So we started to think about this project, and now we have at the moment 4 contracts in development. It's a series of PPPs program, thinking about a green consumption for our own energy. And the main idea is to install solar plants for our own consumption. And so you can ask me, but we don't have land. We don't have available place in São Paulo. And then facing this challenge, someone said, why not using the rooftop of the public buildings? So based on this question, we started to map the city's rooftops by Google Maps, by georeferencing programs, and cross-checking this information with other databases, irradiation solar databases, and we created a model of contract that it is the municipality offers the rooftop, so the private partner installed the solar plants on surface, and all the energy generated there is compensed in other buildings of the municipality. And monthly, the municipality pays for the service of operating and maintaining the solar plants. And we are talking about long-term contracts. We are talking about 55 years contract. So it's a long-term agreement, and we have to take the responsibility to put goals there, to put sustainable goals in these long-term contracts. So now we have one of these PPPs assigned. It's for the Health Secretary building, and we are developing other 3, one for Education Secretary, and other for a disused landfill. Imagine we have empty space, big environmental problem there, and we have the opportunity to generate energy in a landfill not used anymore. So if you see that in a couple of years ago, the size of the rooftop municipality wasn't important, and today this data allowed us to create innovation in the city. And we really believe that if we change the way we produce energy, we are reducing directly the greenhouse emissions in the cities. And as I told you, I think all the cities has to take the responsibility on that, because we are we are consumers, and we have to start from the example. And to create this context, some questions are really important. I think we have to part from what we have. Maybe we don't need a revolution. Maybe we can work with our information. You told us. We have everything we need. We have technology. So we can ask, what kind of information is already available? And which ones do we need to create or to organize? Maybe if I organize the information the public sector has, it's a big work and a big legacy for the citizens. And we know information about our city consumption or even about our citizens. Are we aware of the regulation? Is there any opportunity? And we have to ask, how can citizens measure the results of our projects? And are we aware of what university is producing, of what startups is producing? So we have to face these questions. I know it's a lot of questions, but I think there is no need to panic because we have everything we need. We have, it's usual people saying we need more law or that we need more technology. And I would like to share with you another point of view. We have everything we need. We have in Brazil a solid legal framework to deal with. And as a lawyer, I say, please we don't need more laws. And we have a large number of data, and we don't know what to do with that. We have stakeholders interested in doing something different. We have IoT, we have geographical information systems, we have blockchain to trust our data. And even if we don't have a specific law, for example, we have international standards. We have ISO, we have GRI to deal with and to support some decisions. And we have the national commitments too in our view. And so I think we have to be brave. We don't need more technology. We don't need more law. All we need is courage and creativity. And we need more discussion like that so we can think about transforming the world. Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you. Questions to Marcela? Questions? You have questions for all of the panelists here? No, okay. For Marcela or for Bruno? I think you had a question for Bruno, right? Let's just keep with Marcela and then Bruno at the end, okay? So do you have professors like me? Do you have questions? Yeah? Okay, just only for Marcela, right?
So Marcela, can you tell a little bit more other specific initiatives or projects related to climate smart cities that you talked about? And particularly, can you explain with detail what kind of data these projects or initiatives they use it?
Perfect. The first point is that any data can be used in a climate smart city. As I told you, we, the public sector, have many data, but we don't know what to do with that. And some simple initiatives maybe can make all the difference. And I would like to highlight one initiative in Recife. It's a capital in the northeast of Brazil. The city was identified as a hotspot in IPCC report, and since 2015 they started a revolution in the framework legal in the city, and they start a municipal transformation itself. They approved a municipal law of climate change, and they elaborated a low carbon development plan, and they count on digitalization using all the data about transportation, about the habitant consumption, like if they use bikes or if they use cars. There are some apps that the government use to cross information, and they put everything in a panel, in a app, publicized for everybody. It's called MoClima, Monitoramento do Clima, and it's everything open to I can't show you here, but it's really interesting to see. You monitor in real time all the information about the goals, the municipal goals, and the SDG goals too, and it's open to everybody and based on low carbon urban planning. This is one example. In Rio de Janeiro, is there anybody from Rio here? Yeah. You have the operation center, the core, and oh, perfect. So you can help me with that. It was created because of a catastrophic flood in 2010, and they created to predict it and to help to mitigate these floods and these extreme events. And there are more than 500 cameras, and they are connected with more than 30 public agencies and private enterprise too. And it's very important to remember that we have protection data laws, we have the LGPD, so we have to care about this data sharing, public and private, but I think we have the security, technical and legal security. But here we have data related to transit, to transportation, to rain, to the climate, to everything. And I think we will have good news in the future about this center. And finally, the last one, I would like to present a very nice initiative, a result of a partnership of Glasgow University and some German and Brazilian universities. It's called Dados à prova d'água, in Portuguese, in English, waterproofing data. They work with vulnerable communities. They go there in these peripheral areas, and they teach people how to generate data, because we have a problem, and it's a social problem. We don't have data, we don't have information about this place, the not regulated city, the not official city. So they go to schools, they go to these areas, and they generate data with a handmade rain gauge, pluviometro, made by PET bottle. So you put on the floor, and so you can measure the rain. And they also teach the students to insert this information app. So today, the CEMADEM, National Center of Natural Disaster Monitoring and Alerts, has this information because of this project. So you transform garbage in technology. We don't need more technology. That's it.
Okay, we have a question there, and then Nicolo, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for Marcela and also for Bruno. Shall I make just the one to Marcela and later on I present my question to him, or can I make both questions right now? And
You decide, Professor,
Oh my goodness.
wherever
Okay.
it feels best.
So first, Marcela, thank you very much for your presentation. I have some questions for you. If you could just please tell us a bit more about the companies that are involved in the public-private partnerships. Are there like big companies, or are you also focusing on creating some partnerships with startups? We were talking about that yesterday, so I would like to know a bit more about that. And we were talking about how we need also to have some kind of transparency with regard to data, not just to the citizens, but also to companies and all the stakeholders involved. With regard to climate change and the climate emergency that we are facing right now, and this seminar also has some connection to this, I would like to know what are the limits that we need to face when we are talking about transparency and privacy with regard to climate emergency. So I think it's also a question that could be potentially made to all of you, because we are probably, of course we have the rules, we also have like some rules here in Brazil with regard to privacy and so on, but as someone who works for the government somehow, how can we ensure that the privacy is going to be protected, but we also have a climate emergency and the cities are also part of this this climate emergency somehow. So I'd like to know if, from you and from the others, if you could tell me a bit more about this. And also to Bruno, I will pose my question, but don't worry, you can answer me later if it's possible. I don't know if I'm going to ask something that you've already said, because I arrived later, so I'm sorry for that. But with regard to data, we also need to have data centers, and all the big corporations, tech corporations, they have like huge data centers. And how can we ensure that all these data centers, that they require a lot of energy somehow? If you are aware of this problem, and if IBM or other tech corporations that you might know are also trying to protect themselves with regard to the use of energy and the speed growth of data centers around the world. So thank you very much for that.
Marcel, yeah, I'm afraid that your power of summation is being dared now, because we would like to hear from you both. Okay, so first you can go first, and then Bruno, and we have other question from Professor Nicolo there. So Marcela, you can go first, and then Bruno, you. Okay.
Okay. So about our green program and about our PPP program in São Paulo, and now I'm talking about our work in São Paulo Presidios. PPPs are huge contracts, a huge agreement, and it involves a complexity, technical and financially. So sometimes we work with startups, but the contracts demand a huge amount of money of capex normally. So sometimes we are trying to think about how can we provide security, financial security for the contract, and at the same time attract startups and small players. Because if we are talking about agreement, long-term agreements, 30 years, 25, 35 years, so we have to be exigent with the partners. Yeah, we have to choose very well, very secure partners. So I think the startups can work with these big players, because we can't forget this financial aspect for the security of the public contracts. But we have other agreements, not the PPP ones. Maybe in these agreements we can use more startups technology. Actually, this green program, this green energy program, it's very simple in the way it's about installing solar plants. It's distributed generation, as Mariana told us. So you install that. There is not a complexity technology. It's more about money than about technology here, because we are using the public rooftop. It will involve the school there, it will involve the hospital there, so we have assured that we have security and maintenance there. The first question. The second question, it's a $1 billion question, $1 billion question. The limit is not clear, never. It's never clear. It has to be measured each time, each project. And normally, when we are talking about climate change programs, climate actions program, we can use anonymized data. So blockchain can help us with that, and we have amount of heat maps, and probably we would never need exactly the personal data. I don't need to know that Carol is concerned, but maybe I need to know that here in this region, the consumption pattern is someone. And so I can work with this data. I think that the intelligence for public government is that we use by region, by neighborhood, or maybe by a building itself, but not reaching the personal data itself. I think today, it's not a limit for us. We can work with another data. We can find out solutions of aggregating this data and not reaching the people, with the person itself, so we can protect both sides.
Thank you, Marcela. Bruno, it's on you.
Thank you for the question. It was one of the topics that I called out in those the business drivers areas. It is a very, you're absolutely right. It is a very real and recognized, I was going to say problem, I should perhaps say challenge, right? So as you called out, the energy consumption by data centers is one today that is very much responsible for a lot of emissions, certainly. And we address that, I mean, it's true for us, it's true for any technology company, particularly those that operate in this sort of cloud computing and AI spaces. And it is one for our clients as well, right? The ones that use the infrastructure and the systems that we provide to them. We address that in several ways. I'll just mention three, as I think it sort of covers the span of everything that we do from, we do research on, say, cooling technologies that allow those data centers to be used more efficiently or to consume less energy. We do research on designing microprocessors such that they are also more energy efficient as well, right? So that is at the very basic level of the infrastructure. It extends all the way to how we provide those capabilities to our clients and how we use it, or we use those ourselves. So for example, when one goes on to IBM Cloud and they're deciding how to allocate or to deploy a certain workload on resources, not only they can see how it is that where those resources are going to be located, but they can actually also understand what are the impact of emissions associated with each. And they may use that as a deciding factor when they decide how it is that they're going to deploy those workloads. So in addition to, say, the geographical location of the workloads, each one of those will have perhaps a different profile in terms of emissions. That being made visible allows a client, for example, to better understand, okay, I might want to switch a particular workload from this to that location because it will allow me to save emissions on that. Another way in which we do that is by proactively managing the deployed resources such that those that are inactive or not being used at a particular point can be turned off, right? So that, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, is usually corresponds to a huge chunk of the energy consumptions, resources that have been deployed at a specific point in time, and that is the beauty of cloud, right? You can sort of scale these things up and down easily, but it is the case that a lot of, say, IT teams don't properly take the measures or the caution that they should in order to deallocate or turn off some of the resources that are not being used anymore. And when we do that in a proactive manner, we've actually bought a company and we do internal work that does exactly that, we can often see, say, 30% decrease in the costs and the associated energy consumption just by turning off the things that are not being used but that anyone just forgot to switch them off. Thank you.
Professor Simão.
So Simão is gonna speak in Portuguese, and then after Chris is gonna help us to summarize the ideas in English. Okay? Simão, por favor.
Bom dia. Desculpe, mas eu não domino a língua inglesa, então me sinto mais confortável em falar em português. Bom, em nome do nosso secretário executivo de transporte, em nome do nosso presidente, eu gostaria em primeiro lugar de agradecer à Universidade Mackenzie por nos permitir aqui compartilhar com vocês um pouquinho da nossa experiência sobre a implantação da eletromobilidade no sistema de transporte da cidade de São Paulo. Eu não sei se todos conhecem, mas a SP Trans, né, São Paulo Transporte, é a empresa gestora do sistema de transporte por ônibus na cidade de São Paulo. Além de planejar, programar, fiscalizar o sistema de transporte, ela também tem um papel importantíssimo na cidade, que é o de fomentar o desenvolvimento tecnológico com vistas ao conforto, acessibilidade e preservação ao meio ambiente na cidade. Esse aqui são alguns dos números da nossa cidade. Hoje nós temos aproximadamente 13.340 ônibus, né, disponíveis para a população. Nós estamos transportando pouco mais de 7 milhões de pessoas por dia, consumindo pouco mais de 500 milhões de litros de diesel ano. né? E esses assim, são alguns pequenos números da cidade, a gente sabe que impressionam um pouco, né? Anteriormente, à pandemia, nós transportávamos uma Suécia por dia, agora estamos transportando um pouco menos. Aí tem outros dados, eu não vou me ater, porque são alguns dados assim mais de conhecimento. A nossa frota hoje tem 9,7 milhões de veículos já equipados com ar-condicionado, 5,2 mil veículos com Wi-Fi, 100% acessível. Nós temos aqui na cidade 11 milhões de bilhetes ativos, 100% da nossa frota é monitorada por GPS. Então, são alguns números para vocês conhecerem um pouquinho do que é o sistema de transporte por ônibus na cidade. Nós temos todo o sistema operado por iniciativa privada através de contratos de concessão. Esses contratos foram assinados em 2019, então são contratos recentes. Houve um processo licitatório para esse fim. E a composição do nosso sistema é dividida em 3 grupos. O grupo estrutural, que são os eixos, né, principais, corredores de ônibus que operam com veículos de grande porte. O grupo de articulação regional, que são ônibus de médio porte, alimentando bairros, alimentando metrôs e interligando regiões, e o sistema distribuidor, que são aqueles veículos de pequeno porte, que acabam fazendo atendimento nas regiões periféricas da cidade e nos bairros. A cidade ela é dividida em áreas de atuação, como vocês podem ver as cores. Aliás, se vocês tiveram a oportunidade de observar, quem não é de São Paulo, os ônibus eles estão identificados em função da cor pela área de atuação. Então, o usuário, observando a identidade visual do veículo, ele já tem noção se aquele veículo vai ou não para a região que é a de interesse dele. São os tipos de veículos que operam aqui na cidade. Então, nós operamos aqui veículos com capacidade aí entre 30 e 40 passageiros, até veículos com capacidade superior a 120 passageiros. O que eu comentei das cores está representado aí. São, hoje, esses 13.400 veículos divididos aí nas quantidades da última coluna que vocês podem observar. Bom, o fato que nos traz aqui, inclusive, acho que é o motivo principal, que envolve as questões climáticas, começou na cidade de São Paulo, né, através da promulgação de uma lei de mudanças climáticas, que foi instituída em 2019, que é a Lei Municipal 14.933. Ela tem vários artigos que envolvem vários aspectos, né, de relevância para a melhoria da qualidade de vida e do ar da cidade, mas, dentre elas, está destacado aí o artigo 50, que estabelecia, né, da assinatura da lei, num prazo máximo de 10 anos, nós substituirmos o combustível fóssil pelo combustível não fóssil nos ônibus que circulam na cidade de São Paulo. Ou seja, nós teríamos que eliminar o diesel. Nossa, já estão me mostrando o tempo aqui. O diesel do transporte urbano da cidade. Por uma série de dificuldades, dentre elas, nós estamos já em fim de contrato na cidade, tratando de uma nova licitação, e dificuldade em tecnologias que atendessem aos nossos volumes, muitas incipientes, nós não conseguimos atingir esses parâmetros. Aí houve uma discussão junto à sociedade civil, fabricantes, né, o legislativo da cidade, vários agentes, atores aí participaram, e houve uma alteração do artigo 50 e foi promulgada em 2018 a Lei 16.802, que, ao invés de estabelecer a substituição de combustível fóssil por não fóssil, optou-se em definir cronogramas de redução de emissões de poluentes, envolvendo o dióxido de carbono, né, o gás de efeito estufa, o material particulado e o NOx, que são diretamente ligados à saúde, e com alguns parâmetros já pré-estabelecidos. Dentre esses parâmetros, os 2 marcos. Em 10 anos, a gente reduzir 50% do CO2 de origem fóssil, 90% de material particulado e 80% de NOx, e em 20 anos, 100%, 95%. Bom, como nós estamos na fase final de conclusão dos processos licitatórios, para que nós não tivéssemos, né, nenhum problema na implantação da lei, inserimos nos nossos contratos de concessão um cronograma de redução anual de emissões, e não em 10 e 20 anos, para não corrermos o risco de deixarmos para o último ano e não cumprirmos, né? E temos também, né, a possibilidade de acenar ao mercado e dar tempo ao mercado de se adequar a essas necessidades da cidade, termos recursos financeiros para podermos cumprir. Foi inserido nos contratos esse cronograma que está aí representado, se vocês observarem em vermelho, é o 10º ano da lei e o 20º. Os nossos contratos definiram algumas metas, estabeleceram algumas regras. Para vocês terem uma ideia, qualquer ônibus diesel que circular na cidade hoje, ele não pode ter mais do que 10 anos, né, de operação, e a idade média da frota não pode ser superior a 5. Como toda tecnologia que nós buscamos no mercado, ela custa mais caro, né, tanto na aquisição quanto na operação, a gente observou isso, e quando a gente fala operação, envolve todos os custos fixos e variáveis, inclusive em investimentos em infraestrutura e aquisição de veículos. Nós, pelas experiências que tivemos operando veículos de tração elétrica, estabelecemos como idade máxima dos veículos elétricos 15 anos, inclusive para possibilitar uma melhor amortização do investimento. Todos esses veículos que circulam na cidade de São Paulo, eles seguem um padrão definido pela SP-Trans. Então, a SP-Trans, ela define as especificações técnicas dos veículos que circulam na cidade. Nós tínhamos apenas especificações definidas para veículos com motor a combustão, desenvolvemos especificação para veículos de tração elétrica, com uma série de players, aí, de parceiros no mercado, envolvendo inclusive fabricantes de veículos e componentes. Esses veículos, antes de adentrarem ao sistema, eles são submetidos a uma série de testes, ensaios, para verificar se eles atendem às condições operacionais da cidade, né? Nós temos mais de 1.300 linhas com as condições mais variadas. Inclusive, nós operamos em área de mananciais na cidade, atravessamos balsa com ônibus, né? Mais de 15 quilômetros de estrada de terra, depois entramos no asfalto. Então, as condições são bem adversas aqui. Então, nós temos que ter desde tanque de guerra até, né, Rolls Royce aqui para transportar. Híbridos. Bom, e para isso o que nós fizemos? Iniciamos, né, dentro dos estudos, com mais ênfase, um teste piloto na cidade com veículos de tração elétrica. Por quê? Porque de todas as tecnologias que nós fomos buscar, nós verificamos que hoje, digo na data de hoje, aquela que atendia todos os requisitos da lei, né, na plenitude, são os veículos de tração elétrica. Então, qualquer veículo que tenha tração elétrica, hoje atenderia às necessidades. E por que não partir para trólebus, então, como nós temos aqui na cidade, né, mais de 200 trólebus? Numa análise de custo-benefício, que toda a base da SP-Trans para esse estudo se pautou em 3 elementos. O ambiental, que é o foco aqui da legislação e do contrato, o técnico operacional, que muitas tecnologias elas não atendem na plenitude às nossas necessidades, e o financeiro, que a conta tem que fechar, ela tem que se equilibrar. Então, tudo isso foi levado em consideração. E quase que, na totalidade, foi direcionado para os veículos de tração elétrica. Aí iniciamos um processo, né, até pela falta de experiência com veículos de tração elétrica movidos a bateria, que pelo custo operacional, ele leva vantagens em relação ao veículo trólebus. Do ponto de vista operacional, o trólebus ele tem 2 vias, uma que é o pavimento, a outra que é a rede de contato. Se ele não tiver conectado à rede elétrica, ele não funciona e acaba engessando, né? Ele acaba não tendo flexibilidade operacional para aplicação na cidade. Paralelamente a isso, o que fizemos? Em parceria com o distribuidor de energia local, havia uma dúvida gigantesca. Aliás, quando nós começamos esse projeto, diziam para nós, se vocês eletrificarem a frota inteira da cidade de São Paulo, vocês vão causar um blackout no Brasil, não é nem na cidade. Então, assim, tinha uma série de exageros e tal, mas, de qualquer maneira, o que nós fizemos? Esses pontos que vocês estão vendo pretos aí no mapa são os endereços onde ficam as garagens que operam aqui na cidade de São Paulo, onde eles abastecem, lavam, fazem toda a manutenção dos veículos. Nós pedimos à distribuidora local que fizesse uma avaliação quanto à disponibilidade de energia em cada um desses endereços, caso a gente transformasse 100% da frota da cidade em veículos elétricos. Pedimos também que eles nos passassem qual seria essa disponibilidade de energia ao longo do ano, se haveria interrupção, qual percentual ou não, porque o nosso sistema não pode ter solução de continuidade. E, assim, notícia positiva, 100% desses endereços podem ser eletrificados. Existe um custo de infraestrutura para isso, né? E esse custo, só para vocês terem uma ordem de grandeza, ele equivale a mais ou menos R$100 mil por ônibus ao longo dos 15 anos de contrato, só investimento em infraestrutura para poder alimentar todos esses endereços. Bom, como eu disse, nós não tínhamos experiência, resolvemos convidar alguns dos nossos operadores, já que os contratos estavam em fim de vigência, e não obrigá-los a participar de um projeto piloto para implantar uma frota de veículos na cidade, onde nos desse parâmetros de confiabilidade, disponibilidade, né, autonomia, que é um ponto essencial para nós, as condições operacionais do veículo em uma linha pré-estabelecida por nós, dentre as várias linhas da cidade, que poderia nos dar uma série de informações para que a gente tomasse a decisão, inclusive, do ponto de vista de distribuição dessa frota em relação às 1.300 linhas. Para isso, houve uma parceria com o único fornecedor à época de veículos elétricos, que é uma empresa chinesa que está sediada em Campinas, chamada BID. Ela acabou fazendo investimento para o nosso operador, né? Ela financiou os veículos, a infraestrutura, ela definiu um valor e o fornecimento de uma energia elétrica com um diferencial. Ela vem gerando energia através de placas fotovoltaicas, então uma energia limpa, né? Ela paga a transmissão e entrega energia para o operador no ponto de carregamento do veículo. Essa frota piloto está operando desde novembro de 2019, já são um pouquinho mais de 3 anos, aí só a infraestrutura, a última foto da direita já são os carregadores que alimentam os ônibus na garagem, toda a infraestrutura que envolve. Aí alguns números, deixa eu correr que já estourei demais o tempo. Nós já rodamos mais de 2,5 milhões de quilômetros com essa frota piloto, né, transportamos mais de 6 milhões aí de pessoas, e ela vem apresentado um resultado bem satisfatório, nos dando parâmetros para que a gente defina os critérios para uma frota que a gente tem projeção aí de estar sendo inserida no sistema. Paralelamente a essas questões contratuais, há uma meta do nosso prefeito em relação à cidade de até dezembro de 2024 nós temos no mínimo 2.600 ônibus elétricos circulando na cidade. Então esse é um ponto que eu acho que é importante e relevante. Bom, aí são dados do ponto de vista ambiental. Com essa frota piloto aí, que são 18 elétricos hoje, não considerando os veículos trólebus, nós deixamos aí de consumir 28 milhões de litros, aí quase 29 milhões de litros de diesel, reduzimos aí 69 mil toneladas de CO2 e assim sucessivamente. Então, tivemos um ganho bem significativo. Bom, quais são os nossos desafios? Hoje, esses veículos eles custam de 3 a 3,5 vezes superior a um similar diesel. Então, um dos nossos desafios hoje é exatamente esse, a gente amortizar, né, esse alto valor do veículo nesse nosso fluxo de caixa, né, para inserção no sistema. O que está interferindo diretamente nisso é que nós temos uma série de elementos, inclusive nos próprios veículos importados, então a influência do dólar tem impactado muito nesse processo. Nós ainda temos, né, a necessidade de fornecedores de veículos para atender a todo aquele leque que eu comentei com vocês, que não tem oferta para todos os modelos e tipos ainda para implantação na cidade. A autonomia, eu já citei anteriormente, é um dos pontos, a gente exige no mínimo 250 km para um dia de operação para minimizar os custos em infraestrutura. Então esse é um desafio, nós estamos muito próximos, os veículos estão fazendo em média 220, 230 km de autonomia. Uma dúvida que ninguém tem ainda uma resposta, mas nós já temos por parte dos fabricantes pelo menos uma garantia de 8 anos, os veículos terão que durar 15 no sistema, que é a vida das baterias. Não sei se vocês sabem, mas o pacote de baterias que alimenta esse veículo, ele custa de 50% a 60% do valor total do veículo. Então, se nós tivermos problemas com esse pack de baterias, que é como o pessoal diz, nós teremos um problema muito sério do ponto de vista econômico e operacional. Bom, nós ainda estamos discutindo, né, do ponto de vista aqui municipal, e eu acho que isso tem que chegar na esfera federal, que é ter uma política tarifária específica para a eletromobilidade, que hoje nós não temos. Então, é um outro ponto. E linhas de financiamento, porque todos os nossos operadores, eles já têm um grau de endividamento em relação à aquisição dos veículos que eles estão operando, como esse veículo custa muito mais caro. Então, hoje é necessário que se tenha linhas de financiamento específicas para esse fim, e isso está sendo bem trabalhado. Eu estava conversando, inclusive, com o Vladimir aqui fora a respeito do assunto. Já ultrapassei demais. Aí eu comentei com vocês, aí nós resolvemos aqui Só mostrar para vocês que nós não trabalhamos sozinhos, nós temos aí uma série de convênios de cooperação técnica firmados para o desenvolvimento, né, e a implantação da eletromobilidade no sistema de transporte. Me desculpe ter estourado demais o tempo, eu agradeço e me coloco à disposição.
Obrigado.
Hi, so I know we are out of time, so we'll just ask the question and we can discuss during the coffee break, right? So I think it's very important, this aspect of private PPPs, public-private partnerships, and you emphasize the role of responsible consumption, you know, as the municipality or the public sector. One issue that we saw during the pandemic is that the government used a lot of technology to provide services like heat maps, and it then contracted some. There was some allegation that in loco in Ceará and Recife was very much used, and it was revealing the location of users. So it was leaking in the apps through the SDKs, and also other things with regard to educational services that were offered on the apps. And the data of students were collected, so the municipality contracted with basically third parties without much transparency or safeguards in these contracts. So I think that when it comes to environment, maybe the problems are slightly different than with data privacy, but I have just two questions in that regard. One, when you do these biddings, can you prioritize projects that are not just chosen on the basis of the cost? So you are saying, you know, you can impose some requirements of, for example, ISO standards, okay, but can you also use the extent to which they meet the sustainable development goals as one of the criteria for choosing the contracting parties? And secondly, with regard to transparency, are there issues in making these contracts available and viewable for the populations? So do these parties claim confidentiality, trade secrets that hinder the transparency over, you know, the oversight of the public? So this would be interesting to discuss, maybe during the coffee break. I don't know if we have time.
Let's just change the scenario then. Because all of you are staying with us for the coffee break, right? I said, well, okay, that would be nice. So we can just change the scenario, and the answers can be shared. Okay? Thank you so much, Professor Nicolo. Then we are having the coffee break. I invite you now for the coffee, and then we are returning for the final panel at noon. Thank you, Mariana. Well, you are not joining us for coffee, unfortunately, but thank you so much, and I hope you can join us for other events. Thank you very much for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.